Drink package prices, late night buffets, and cruise ship crew wages. It is Sunday, September 28th, 2025, and on this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, we're talking about what one thing we would change about cruising.
Just like the wind, just let it pass through, just let it pass you.
I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. I've been making travel videos now for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. Some of my memorable experiences traveling around the world have been documented in my two books, Places Please and Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship. If you like to read and want to give me a little extra support, check them out on Amazon now. As you are watching this, I am currently down in Munich, Germany, visiting the real, legitimate Oktoberfest. Actually, if you're watching this on Sunday, I was there Thursday and Friday of this week. It's actually Wednesday today while I'm recording this. And if you've been looking at the daily updates on my Facebook page or Instagram, what did you think? How did we do? All right, in today's video, like I said, we're going to talk about what one thing you all and I would change about cruising. I'm going to go through a lot of your comments and suggestions, and in the end, I'm going to tell you what mine would be, and I actually kind of have two. Can I do that? Will you let me? I asked you all in the comment section on YouTube, as well as on the very Unofficial Travel Guides Facebook page, what one thing you would change, and a lot of these, it's interesting, a lot of these are quite similar. And I realize, just from like the 50 people who maybe answered to these comments, if there's already in that small group of cruisers a lot of similarities, then the actual numbers of people wanting to change these things must be actually quite a bit higher. And if you wonder why, well then why don't the cruise ships notice this and change these things? I think the answer usually is money. So let's go through some of these things, and then in the end I'll tell you mine. First one I want to get into is smoking on board.
For so long, I've been trying to get you out of my...
A few people, including Christy Eubanks and Kurt Schulteis, mentioned they don't want to smell smoke on board. This is something I can totally relate to, and I talked about this in another video not too long ago, and I was really surprised about how many people chimed in to say that not only do they want to be able to smoke in more places on board, but they also want to be able to smoke something other than cigarettes. And while I personally have no problem with people smoking the other thing they smoke other than cigarettes, the green stuff that gets dried out, and a lot of people connect it to like Jamaica. If you've read Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship, my first experience with that involved a movie star, and it did not go well. But in this questionnaire, basically, be it on YouTube or on Facebook, there was nobody who showed up to say they wanted more smoking. Anybody who mentioned smoking all said they wanted less smoking, and I would assume that most people also fit this bill. I honestly don't mind if there are specific smoking areas and the people who want to smoke stick to those areas. I have a problem with people just smoking wherever the hell they want, especially on the balcony next to me or below me. And I know there are a lot of really polite smokers out there who want to enjoy an occasional smoky treat and definitely don't want to bother others with it. I'm really appreciative for people like that, especially on a cruise ship, but there definitely are the other kind too. And frankly, I hope you don't go on my cruise. Lorella Lawson brought up a point that I thought was really interesting that I want to talk about. She said she wants more itineraries of 5 to 6 days. That's the sweet spot for me of worth the investment, but not too long away from family and job. Yeah, good point. Some cruises are 7 days, but 7 days, depending on where you live, is going to require you to actually have 8 or 9 days of vacation in order to get there and get back. So having a cruise be 5 or 6 days will definitely make it more accessible and available for a wider group of people. That's a very good point. Not every cruise starts on Saturday or Sunday. Some start in the middle of the week. So if you're going to be traveling from someplace to get there, then a 5 or 6 day cruise just makes it a lot easier, doesn't it? January St. James says she wants to change all those announcements. Well, girlfriend, have you ever been on a Mediterranean Mediterranean cruise on a Costa or MSC ship? If you want to talk about announcements, if you cruise with Costa or MSC in the Med, they do the announcements in like Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, German, English.
It goes on forever.
And after the second or third day, I feel like everybody's thinking, yeah, okay, you did it in Italian, you did it in English, we all got it now, you can stop. But no, they just keep on going. And I have to say, on other cruise ships, like when I cruise on Royal or NCL, I honestly haven't been really bothered by the announcements, and especially if you're in your cabin, you can turn that thing all the way down and then you don't even hear them. One comment that popped up here a couple times, like from Ralph and Rita and Jason Simmons, they're kind of over this trend of mega ships and want more cruise lines to build smaller ships. And I don't know, do any of you think that this is going to happen, that cruise lines like Royal Caribbean and NCL are going to start building smaller ships again? I have a feeling that the only cruise lines that are interested in building ships with a lower capacity are going to be the cruise lines that are offering some kind of luxury experience where they can still make a lot of money with a less amount of passengers. Jason says that the industry doesn't lose track of a cruise being a relaxing vacation with great food service, accommodations, and entertainment, and ships that are not trying with all their might to be amusement park of the seas. Royal seems to get this at least by maintaining the Radiance class ships. When I cruised around Hawaii last year, I was on a Radiance class ship, and that was a really good size of ship. Didn't feel like a mega ship, had some cozy areas, but also had some of the fun upgrades that make a Royal Caribbean cruise sort of great for everyone in the family cruise. But honestly, Royal just announced that they're building a 5th Icon class ship. So I think to hope that Royal Caribbean is going to build another ship that's like the size of the Serenade or the Monarch back then. I don't know. I think the chances are pretty low. Are there any new cruise ships that are in like the basic segment, not the super luxury segment, that have come out recently that are like only for 2,500, 300 passengers? I can't think of any. Let me know if you can think of one. One of the most popular comments on this question was that people want the gratuities to just finally be added to the price of the cruise.
I want to know what it's like.
Mark Kozlowski, Chris Clark Bedingfield, Bill Cook, If You Seek Amy, and others are saying they're sick of feeling responsible to pay the crew members a reasonable wage. And I totally get this. You know, even after 40 cruises and with all the experience I have on board, I still find myself at the end of every cruise wondering, okay, how much do I give? Who should I give it to? Like when we cruised in the Haven on NCL, which is something I probably will never do again, they deducted the automatic gratuities from my account every day, but then our butler and our concierge also said to us,
by the way, we don't get any of that, so leave us tips too.
Of course, they didn't say it like that, but they did inform us that that money that gets deducted from our account that says onboard gratuities doesn't go to them. What's up with that? Yeah, so honestly, I would also appreciate just knowing whatever I'm paying for the cruise, that includes all of it. All the service and everything. And then if there is some crew member, some employee that I interact with on board who I feel like I want to give something extra to, then I promise you I will do that. But the sort of surprise, you're paying more for the cruise once you get on the cruise, and even though we're deducting that, we're still gonna ask you in other ways to pay the crew more. I don't like that either. I'm kind of over it too, and I would be willing to pay a higher base price to know everybody's getting what they deserve, and there's no surprises. But that is not my number one or my number 1 and 2 highest things on my list. We're going to talk about 1 or 2 more of the things in the comments, and that will lead into mine, and we're going to get to that right after this commercial break. Did you get one? What was it about? Write it in the comments below. What do you think of my new cast, by the way? I was saying it's like a mix of Avengers and Michael Jackson history tour. If you're not up to date, I broke my wrist and it's causing all sorts of problems in my life. There's another thing that popped up a couple times in the comments that a lot of people feel the same way about. Leslie Hart Miller says, 100% kindness and compassion amongst all on the ships. This includes staff and cruisers. Michelle Campbell said, the attitude of some people, the sense of entitlement now compared to pre-COVID is horrendous. Jeremy Farino says the cruise lines should actually enforce the rules that they have in place. Fear of liability is a powerful thing, apparently. It has become a tradition now on the very unofficial travel guides that when I'm on board a cruise, towards the end, I sit down and in a fun way talk about all the, let's call them, interesting alternative behaviors I witnessed on that cruise. And funnily enough, those videos are usually some of the most watched videos. And it's true. I don't know if it has to do with COVID or just with the way the world works in general, but also as somebody who has been traveling and being around people in a sort of heightened way compared to maybe the average person, I can also 100% say people seem to just not act right anymore. And it is getting worse and worse. I was talking with somebody else in the comment section recently, and we were joking about how maybe you need to pass like a behavior workshop before you can board the ship. Wouldn't that be fun? I would love that. In fact, I'd be willing to help develop it. Should we do that in a Sunday Sofa Time? Like with multiple choice questions and fill in the blanks of if this and this and this, what is the proper way to act? And that, so in addition to the muster drill that everybody has to go to, they also have to go to the behavior workshop, and if they don't pass, off the ship they go. Who's with me on this one? Should we do it? Okay, one of the two things that I would really like to change about cruising has to do with food, and there's a couple other people who mention food as well. Stefan Engqvist says, increase the MDR food standard and cut the price of the beverage packages by half. Debbie Smith wants new menus every month. We cruise monthly and it's boring. That's something I never thought about. For people who are, lucky enough to take a cruise every month, if it's always the same food, that is going to get boring. And of course, that is a absolute first world luxury problem, but it is a point. Art History says, no specialty dining, just have all the food be good. Maestro Teague says, I miss the midnight buffets and the chocolate buffets. Well, honestly, I don't think those are coming back. But altogether, it seems like for a lot of you, as it is for me, the food and dining aspect on board is something that is very important to you, and especially since COVID, and especially since, like we were talking about, people seem to just have less manners nowadays and be less trained in polite and proper ways to act around others. Wow, I summed that up very diplomatically, didn't I? There's one thing that I have experienced on 2 different cruise lines now that I am such a fan of, and I wish more cruises would do it, and that is this buffet concept where you don't go to the buffet, you order from a gigantic, very diverse menu, and then they bring small portions to your table. Virgin Voyages does this, Norwegian Cruise Line does it on their newer ships. I am a huge fan of this concept. It allows you to try a bunch of different things. It allows you to control how much you're eating and not have to decide for just one thing like you have to do in the main dining room. It lets you avoid the annoying waiting in lines, and one of the most important things, no strange people with questionable hygiene are going to be touching the food or anything close to it. I love that. I think more cruise lines need to do this, and honestly, I think they will. And the final thing I want to talk about is something that other people were mentioning here too, like, sorry, I don't know what your real YouTube name is. For me, it shows up RPHSMS58-D5S. Are you a robot? But this person says, less expensive solo travel costs.
Oh my gosh, hallelujah.
I've talked about this in a whole other Sunday Sofa Time, that I feel like the way that cruise lines are allowed to jack up the prices for people traveling on their own, it borders on discrimination. I also said in that video that there are many, many forms of discrimination around the world that need much more attention than this one. I understand that. But it feels so unfair, and it makes it next to impossible for so many people out there in the world to go on a cruise. For those of you who don't know, if you look at the price of a balcony cabin on basically any cruise line, and let's say it's like $1,500 a person for a week-long cruise, and you think, well, that's not too expensive. If one person is going, then they just pay $1,500.
Oh no, it doesn't work like that.
If one person goes on the cruise in a cabin on their own, they usually have to pay upwards of $2,000 because of a thing called a single supplement. The cruise lines, I think, do this for two reasons. One of them is because two people in the cabin are just going to be paying more money for everything, and so by blocking a cabin for just yourself, I guess they claim they're going to be losing money, and that's why they just make you as a solo traveler pay more. And another thing that somebody brought up in that other video when I talked in detail about this situation, which I can totally understand and I don't really have a solution for, is they were saying if everybody could just book a solo cabin for half the price of a cabin with two people, well then everybody would do that, and that would like greatly reduce the capacity of the ships. And now listen, having less people on board as far as being a passenger goes is not usually a bad thing, but I can understand that, yeah, if there's like a family of 5 and it costs the same for them to get 5 cabins as it would for them all to stay in 2 cabins, of course they would do that. Everybody would have their own solo cabin on board, and that's not a very strong business model, I guess. But I feel like there should be a way, just like you can get sort of a doctor's note to prove that you are not fit to travel, and then if you have like travel insurance, you can get your money back. There needs to be some way that you can officially prove that you are single or have found nobody who would go with you, and then that will release you from the single supplement. I don't know, that's something else I think we need to work on. What are your ideas? How can we pitch this to the cruise lines so that it makes sense for them too? All right, everybody, I need to pack my bags and get to the train station. Thanks for spending this part of your Sunday, or whatever day it is you choose to watch this, with me. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you back here next week. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. Bye-bye.